Arrows rained down. He took them all for the alien queen's sake. The battlefield was a chaos of noise and fury, the air thick with smoke and the acrid scent of burning wood. Warriors from both sides clashed with ferocious intensity, their battle cries echoing across the blood-soaked ground. But one man stood out among the rest. His name was Kale, and he was a human soldier who had been fighting alongside the alien alliance for months now. Kale was not like the others. Where his fellow humans were loud and boastful, he was quieter and more thoughtful. His deep brown eyes held a wisdom that seemed beyond his years, and when he spoke, others listened. But when the moment came to act, he never hesitated. His sword moved with deadly precision. His shield became an impenetrable wall, and his courage inspired even the most battle-hardened warriors. On this day, the enemy had launched a surprise attack on the camp where the alien queen resided. The assault came at dawn, when the morning mist still clung to the ground like ghostly fingers. The queen was a towering figure with shimmering blue skin that seemed to catch and reflect every ray of light. Her eyes glowed faintly in the dim light like twin stars in the darkness, and her presence commanded respect among her people, and even among the humans who fought by her side. Kale had noticed her from the first day he joined the Alliance. There was something about her that drew him. Perhaps it was her grace under pressure or the way she genuinely cared for every life under her command. She never asked her soldiers to do anything she wouldn't do herself, and she knew each warrior's name, human and alien alike. When she looked at him, Kale felt as though she could see straight into his soul. But now she was in grave danger. Enemy archers had taken positions on the ridge overlooking the camp, their arrows already nocked and ready. The morning sun glinted off their metal tips like deadly promises. They were firing volleys of arrows toward the queen and her guards, each wave more intense than the last. Kale was nearby, helping to evacuate wounded soldiers, when he saw the deadly rain of arrows heading straight for the queen. Time seemed to slow as he watched the projectiles arc through the air, their trajectory aimed directly at the woman who had become the center of his world, though he had never spoken the words aloud. The queen stood her ground, her royal bearing intact even in the face of death. Her guards formed a protective circle around her, but Kale could see it wouldn't be enough. The arrows were coming too fast, too many, and from too many angles. In that crystalline moment of clarity that comes before great decisions, Kale knew what he had to do. His heart pounded not with fear but with purpose. Every scar he had earned in battle, every drop of blood he had spilled in the name of the Alliance had led to this moment. The Queen's safety wasn't just a military objective. It was personal. She represented everything worth fighting for. Hope, unity, and a future where different worlds could come together in peace. Without a second thought, he lunged forward, his legs carrying him faster than they ever had before. His shield rose high above his head as he placed himself between the Queen and certain death. The first arrow struck the edge of Kale's shield with a sharp clang that rang out like a bell across the battlefield. The impact sent shockwaves up his arm, but he held firm, his muscles straining against the force. The next arrow came an instant later, piercing the leather of his armor and grazing his shoulder, sending a burning pain through his body that made him grit his teeth in determination. Behind him, he could hear the Queen's sharp intake of breath, a sound that somehow cut through all the chaos of battle. He took a step further forward, placing himself directly between her and the oncoming projectiles, his body becoming a living barrier between death and the woman he had come to love, though neither had spoken of such feelings. The Queen froze, for a moment, watching this human soldier risk his life for her. In all her years as a ruler, she had seen countless acts of bravery, but something about Kale's sacrifice struck her deeply. There was no hesitation in his movements, no calculation of reward or recognition, only pure, selfless devotion. Her heart, which she had thought sealed away by duty and responsibility, began to stir with emotions she hadn't allowed herself to feel in years. Her guards tried to move forward to protect him, but Kale waved them back with a determined look that brooked no argument. His eyes, usually so gentle and thoughtful, now blazed with fierce resolve. He was not about to let anyone else take his place in this moment of truth. This was his choice, his sacrifice to make, and he would see it through to the end. More arrows flew through the air like angry wasps, some striking his shield with metallic rings, others embedding themselves in the ground near his feet with dull thuds. One arrow managed to slip past his defenses, grazing his side and leaving a red line across his ribs, but he refused to fall. Blood seeped through his armor, but his grip on his sword remained tight, his stance unwavering. He looked up toward the ridge where the enemy archers were positioned, his gaze calculating and fierce. Even as arrows continued to rain down around him, he was already planning his next move, thinking not just of defense, but of how to turn the tide of this battle. The pain in his shoulder and side felt distant now, overshadowed by the surge of adrenaline and purpose that filled his veins. The battle raged on around them, but in this small circle of protection that Cale had created, time seemed suspended. The Queen watched him with growing amazement and something deeper, a recognition that this man was unlike any she had ever known. His courage wasn't the reckless bravado of a glory seeker, but the steady, enduring strength of someone who had found something worth dying for. Suddenly, the dynamic of the battle shifted. An enemy warrior broke through the defensive lines, his spear raised high as he charged toward the Queen with murder in his eyes. The soldier was massive, his armor blackened with soot and blood, and his battle cry echoed across the field like the roar of some primordial beast. Cale reacted instantly, his body moving before his mind could even process the threat. He threw himself at the attacker, tackling him to the ground with a force that sent both of them sprawling. The spear went flying, its deadly point embedding itself harmlessly in the earth several feet away. They wrestled in the dirt, grunting and straining, against each other. The enemy was larger and possibly stronger, but Cale fought with the desperation of a man protecting everything he held dear. Finally, he managed to wrestle the spear away completely, using it to pin his opponent to the ground until other allied soldiers could arrive to secure the prisoner. The Queen watched in amazement as this lone human soldier defied death itself to keep her safe. Every movement he made, every sacrifice he endured, spoke of a devotion that went far beyond duty or military obligation. As she observed him fighting with such fierce determination, she began to understand that his actions were born not just from loyalty to the alliance but from something far more personal and profound. When the enemy archers finally ran out of arrows, their quivers empty and their positions compromised, the tide of the battle began to turn dramatically. The alien warriors, inspired by Cale's incredible display of courage, rallied behind him with renewed vigor. They pushed back the invaders with a ferocity that surprised even themselves, their battle cries echoing across the field as they drove the enemy from their lands. The Queen was quickly escorted to safety by her remaining guards, but her eyes never left Cale throughout the retreat. Even as she was rushed away from the battlefield, she kept looking back, watching as he continued to fight despite his wounds, his movements growing slower, but his determination never wavering. Cale was eventually helped to a nearby medical tent, where healers began treating his wounds with careful precision. The arrows had left their marks, deep gashes across his shoulder and side, bruises that would turn purple and yellow in the days to come, and muscles strained almost to their breaking point. But despite the pain and exhaustion that threatened to overwhelm him, Cale smiled faintly. He had done what he came here to do. The Queen was safe, and that knowledge filled him with a peace that no amount of physical discomfort could disturb. As the healers worked on him, cleaning and bandaging his wounds, Cale allowed his mind to wander back to the moment when he had thrown himself between the Queen and those deadly arrows. He remembered the way her eyes had widened with shock and concern, not for herself but for him. In that instant, he had seen something in her gaze that made all the pain worthwhile, a recognition, perhaps even affection, that went beyond the formal relationship between a queen and her soldier. The healing process was slow and sometimes agonizing. The alien healers used advanced techniques that were still foreign to human physiology, causing strange sensations that ranged from tingling warmth to sharp, electric jolts. But Cale endured it all with patience, knowing that each moment of discomfort brought him closer to full recovery, and he hoped to seeing the Queen again. Days passed in a blur of rest and gradual healing. Other soldiers came to visit him, offering their respect and gratitude for his heroic actions. Word of his sacrifice had spread throughout the camp, and he had become something of a legend among both human and alien fighters. But all the praise and admiration felt hollow compared to the one visit he truly hoped for. His wounds were healing well, the alien medicine was remarkably effective, but the emotional uncertainty was harder to bear. Had the Queen's expression, in that crucial moment, meant what he thought it did? Or had he simply projected his own feelings onto her natural concern for a wounded ally? The questions tormented him more than any physical pain ever could. Then one morning, when the twin suns were casting long shadows across the medical compound, she came. The Queen herself approached his tent, her blue skin seeming to glow in the gentle light, her eyes holding a warmth and gratitude that moved him deeply. She moved with that same graceful bearing he had always admired. But there was something different about her now, a softness in her expression that he had never seen before. She knelt beside his bed, her royal dignity unchanged but somehow more accessible, more human despite her alien nature. The Queen placed her hand gently on Cale's arm, her touch cool but infinitely comforting. Her fingers, long and elegant, traced the edge of one of his bandages with a tenderness that made his heart race. "You saved my life, Cale," she said softly, her voice carrying a musical quality that seemed to resonate in his very bones. "Not many would have the courage to step in front of flying arrows for someone else. Your bravery will be remembered by my people forever." Cale looked down at his scars, still fresh and pink beneath their protective wrappings, then back up at the Queen. The morning light streaming through the tent created a halo effect around her, making her appear almost ethereal. "I only did what was right," he replied humbly, though his voice carried a slight tremor that betrayed his deeper emotions. "I did not expect anything in return." The Queen's expression softened even further, and for a moment, the formal mask of royalty slipped completely away. What remained was a woman who had been deeply moved by an act of selfless love, though neither of them had yet spoken that word aloud. "You deserve more than words," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. "When you are well enough, you will come with me to my palace. There is something I wish to give you." Curiosity and hope filled Cale's heart as he imagined what the Queen might offer. Was it treasure, gleaming and valuable beyond measure? Or perhaps honor, a title that would make him a legend among his people? Maybe even a place among her royal council, where he could serve at her side and see her every day? He had fought hard and endured unimaginable pain, but nothing could prepare him for what was truly coming. During the weeks that followed, as Cale's strength slowly returned, he found himself thinking constantly about the Queen's promise. The way she had looked at him when she spoke those words, the gentle pressure of her hand on his arm, the musical quality of her voice, every detail was burned into his memory with perfect clarity. Sometimes he would catch himself smiling at nothing, lost in the memory of that moment. Other soldiers would visit and share news from the front lines, but Cale found it difficult to focus on military matters. His mind kept drifting to thoughts of the Queen, wondering what she might be doing at any given moment. Was she thinking of him as often as he thought of her? Did she remember the way their eyes had met in that crucial moment on the battlefield? The alien healers marveled at his recovery rate, attributing it to his strong constitution and positive attitude. But Cale knew the truth. He was healing quickly because he had something wonderful to look forward to. The Queen's promise had given him a reason to fight through the pain, to push himself harder in his rehabilitation exercises, to endure the sometimes uncomfortable treatments with a smile. As his wounds healed, the scars they left behind became a source of pride rather than shame. Each mark told a story of courage, of love expressed through action rather than words. When he looked at them in the mirror, he didn't see disfigurement. He saw proof of the moment when he had chosen to put someone else's life above his own. Finally, the day came when the healers declared him fit for travel. His strength had returned, his wounds had closed cleanly, and the alien medicine had worked, its subtle magic to minimize the scarring. As he prepared for the journey to the Queen's palace, Cale felt a mixture of excitement and nervousness that reminded him of his first day as a soldier. The palace, when he finally saw it, was beyond anything he could have imagined. It was a magnificent structure that shimmered like crystal under the twin suns, its walls seeming to capture and amplify the light until the entire building glowed with an inner radiance. Spires twisted upward into the sky like frozen music, and gardens of impossible beauty surrounded the main structure, with colors that had no names in any human language. The Queen greeted him at the main entrance with open arms, her joy at seeing him healthy and whole evident in every line of her body. The Queen led Kale through corridors that seemed to pulse with living light, past artwork that shifted and changed as they walked, until they reached a chamber filled with warm, golden illumination and the gentle sound of flowing water. The room felt alive somehow, as if the very walls were breathing with contentment and peace. Plants from dozens of worlds created a garden paradise within the palace walls, their exotic blooms filling the air with fragrances that spoke of home and happiness. There, in the center of this magical space, stood a young alien girl no older than 5. Her eyes sparkled with the same ethereal light as the Queen's, but there was something unmistakably human about her features too. The curve of her smile, the way she held herself, the curious tilt of her head as she looked up at Kale with innocent wonder. "This is my daughter," the Queen said, her voice filled with pride and something deeper, a joy so profound it seemed to transform her entire being. "She has your blood in her veins. She is the future of our alliance." Kale was stunned, speechless, his mind struggling to process what he was seeing and hearing. The little girl looked up at him with eyes that were familiar yet entirely new, a perfect blend of 2 worlds that had somehow found harmony in her young face. She smiled at him with complete trust, as if she had been waiting her whole short life to meet him. The Queen's expression grew tender as she watched Kale's reaction. "During our alliance, a bond formed between us stronger than either of us realized at the time," she explained, her voice soft with memory and love. "What happened between us was brief but profound, a connection that transcended the boundaries between our species. This daughter of ours is a symbol of hope, unity, and the promise of a new era where humans and aliens can not only live together, but thrive together as one people." Kale's legs felt weak as the full magnitude of what she was telling him sank in. He had a daughter, a beautiful, perfect daughter, who represented everything good that could come from the joining of their 2 worlds. The little girl stepped forward and took his hand with complete confidence, her small fingers wrapping around his much larger ones with natural affection. "You saved me on that battlefield," the Queen whispered, moving closer to stand beside him as they both looked down at their child. "And in doing so you gave life to a new beginning. The reward for your scars is this child and the legacy we now share. She is proof that love can bridge any gap, overcome any difference, and create something more beautiful than either parent could achieve alone." Kale knelt down beside the girl, feeling a warmth spread through him, unlike anything any battle honor or medal could provide. When she wrapped her small arms around his neck in an enthusiastic hug, he felt his heart expand to accommodate a love he had never experienced before, the fierce, protective, all-consuming love of a parent for their child. He had stepped in front of flying arrows to save a queen, driven by feelings he could barely acknowledge at the time. In return, he had gained not just a family, but a purpose and a future worth fighting for. The scars on his body would fade with time, becoming silver lines that told the story of one perfect moment of courage. But the story of his bravery and the life he had helped bring into the world would live on forever. Every time he looked at his daughter, their daughter, he would remember that some rewards were worth every scar, every moment of pain, every drop of blood spilled in the name of love. And as the 3 of them stood together in that chamber of light and life, surrounded by the beauty of 2 worlds joined as one, Kale knew that his greatest battle had led to his greatest victory.